started. Welcome to Mindful Live 171. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is Wednesday the 18th of January. Yes, good evening, Scafty. Thank you for being here, sir. It's always a pleasure. And it's a Wednesday. It's Hump Day, the middle of the week. And on this middle of the week day, we at Mindful Live here speak about Tobago issues. Blessed night, flame on. We speak about Tobago issues. You know, we are from the Twin Isle. I always say this. We are from the Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. So it wouldn't be complete for me to be speaking about the issues of my country and, leave Tobago out, and to try to mix Tobago in sometimes with some of those other stories may not be as good. So, Wednesday is all Tobago. We talk about Tobago on Wednesday, and there's a lot to talk about on Tobago usually. So, we're starting off this evening talking about, over in Tobago, the fact that some of the political machinations of late have been giving investors a bit of worry. And you see, that's the thing with leadership. That's the thing about choosing leadership. Because the leader, it's not just about the decisions that they make in and of themselves, but the behavior of your leader shines a certain light on your country and could allow for people to want to more or want to less put their money or trust their money inside of your country. Evening, Gush. Good evening. Investors turning away from Tobago. Farley Duke spat, former chairman says. The public spat between Progressive Democratic Patriots leader, PDP leader Watson Duke and Chief Secretary Farley Augustine has been affecting investment in Tobago. This from businessman and former chairman of the Tobago arm of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Commerce, Demi John Cruikshank. He said, as a result of the uncertain political climate, a number of investors have turned their backs on Tobago and are investing elsewhere. TikTok slacking on the job. Nisi, I wanted to know what's going on. I was worried for a moment there. I was going to send out the search party. Good night, Nisi. I jumped in and I didn't see the worry within the first minute. Without that worry, I was this close to saying, you know what, let's wrap up for the night. Yes, I know that though. The TikTok notifications, sometimes they're a little sketchy. That's what the likes are for. The faster the likes run up, generally speaking, the faster the notifications go out there. Good night, Steve Sukram. To tell you all, okay, thank you for telling us that, Steve Sukram. You have a good evening too, sir. Thank you for that. Much appreciated. He said, as a result of the political climate, a number of investors, by Nathan, I was on time. Yes, Reeve, you will. Oh gosh, Reeve, of course, I wasn't going anywhere. I'm still here. I think it might be deliberate too. I do not doubt that. TikTok is a very strange thing, and it seems like very often some of the people who have the control over on some of these platforms, they have what they have interest in going out for. But such is life. What are we going to do about that? Hit the like button, share the live, and the notifications will go out there a bit faster. And this is the problem that you have with choosing anybody as the leader. When people talk about, well, we tried this one before, give this one a chance. Why don't you give that one a chance? Why don't you try this one? This is the problem right here, because leadership is something where a bad leader isn't only about the decisions they make. So maybe the decisions they make could be erroneous, and yes, there's that part. But then there's the part where you, as a foreign investor, if I'm not from Tobago, but I have some extra cash, I'm looking for places in the Caribbean to do some investing, and Tobago looks like a mighty fine place. All right, let's take a little investigation into the place, because if I have some money, some millions to invest into Tobago, I'm not just going to do that on a whim. I would want to do my due diligence. So I go and I look at Tobago, and then I see a party recently swept the elections. Okay, interesting, interesting. They had a serious change of direction there. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe still worth the money. Okay, I'm looking on now. And then the party that recently swept the elections then splits, with the political leader of the party having many harsh words for the leader of the Tobago government. And even some imputations of corruption were passing either side. If I'm looking at my money now, I'm thinking, listen, the leaders of this place don't seem very serious. It seems like I may invest my money there and things could go left. And my money would be left in the cold, or actually in the hot, because we're in the tropics. Slap knee. All right. Cruikshank said several potential investors are concerned about the public outburst between Duke and his members. If you look at it, you are in your father's house and your father is saying to yourself and your siblings, leave, 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 leave. And one day you pick up and leave your father's house and you're living pretty, but then your father says, come back. I want you back in my house. Will you go back? I suppose he's talking there on behalf of Farley and his team. He said the political squabble is affecting investments because people are not sure if Tobago is stable. This is affecting investors and banks, he said. In addition, he said several international calls of concern have been received. Gersh says, I find they need to fix the road in Estonia. And I find it weird that they ain't fixing road, because that's the easiest avenue to get kickbacks. Okay. On the road fixing topic, in a discussion that I had in my conversations, one of the conversations, and no, we are not finished with the conversations. We have more to come. It's in the planning phase, soon to come. But in the previous conversation I had with the chairman of the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation, he was pointing out that the Ministry of Works, I believe it's 21% of the roads, or is it 24? Some early 20% of the roadways in Trinidad and Tobago are under the control directly of the ministry. So, very likely that Roystonia road, and I know the road you're talking about. Trust me. I know that road. That road is terrible. Listen, they need to pave that road connecting straight from Perseverance side there, that same Roystonia back road there, all the way out to Exchange, then across the main road into that, what, Camden region. They paved that, yes, that entire thing needs paving desperately. So yes, I know the road. I'm a Centralian. I have traversed the road many times, and whew, yes. But that road very likely may be under the control of, that would be the CTTRC, the Couva Tabaki Talpa Regional Corporation. That's not the government. And I believe the CTTRC is under the control of the opposition, the United National Congress. So it may be that corporation and the councillors and board and chairman of that corporation responsible, yes, Centralian, you know the terms. that council would be in charge of very likely paving that road. Now, I am not saying to run up by the CTTRC building and argue with them either, because maybe, although they might be the ones responsible for paving the road, they don't control the money. So I am nearly 100% certain, if you were to very likely go and speak to the chairman of the, if you were to get an audience and be able to speak, yes, they would say that they don't have the money for it, and the central government has to release the money, and when they get the money, then they will do it. And then the thing is, speaking to the chairman, it did give me some insight into it. Even if money is released, then each councillor for every different district inside of that Couva Tabaki Talpa Regional Corporation, each councillor would be wanting money for their own little region. They want money to pave their own region, and then how much money are they going to get? Would they get enough to do that amount of work? Because the kind of road works that may be needed from that entire Roystonia region, the kind of roadworks may be needed, you may be talking about a $30 million plus project. And would a councillor be able to clear $30 million to fix that? I doubt it. So, you see, it's kind of the whole system of governance. It could seem like it's made not to work, because how is that going to function? They're not going to get the 30 million. They may get 300,000. So they will patch 60 feet of road. And then the next year they get a next 300,000. So they patch 60 feet of road. By the time they go on 4 years down the road and they patch cumulative 460 feet of road, they have to start back at the first 60 feet because that started to deteriorate already. And the joys of governance. But nonetheless, the point is, it's difficult to blame even one person in that. It's difficult to blame the Minister of Works because he may not have responsibility for that. It's difficult to blame the councillor for the region because he has to wait for the corporation to clear the money for him. It's difficult to blame the corporation because they have to wait for the Ministry of Finance to clear the finances for that. It's difficult to blame the Ministry of Finance because they're saying they would say that they sent finances to the corporation, but it's up to the corporation and how they disperse the finances. The blame is so easy to be just thrown to the next person and just thrown to the next person and thrown and thrown and thrown and thrown until you get lost and no one to blame and no road is fixed. I thought I alone see it over the decades. No, Flame On, it's not you alone, sir. It is not. And yes, we're talking Tobago, but that was just a bit of the Trinidad side of that with the roads, because I had that discussion. That was a lot of what I spoke about. If you're interested in it, I had an entire conversation. You could head over to my YouTube channel. I'm streaming live on TikTok, on Instagram, but also on YouTube. You can head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over there on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And there is a conversation there with the chairman of the Tunapuna Piaka Regional Corporation. And we spoke about some of that and some of the difficulty in even running those things and getting things done. That's why, listen, I understand people who are kind of the view that, forget all of this, forget all this government nonsense. Let's quash all this government business and privatize everything and the country will run like that. Now, I am not averse to that idea. The only problem with that, I think all the roads would... Listen, if Roystonia was a private community where they had to see about their own roads, that road would have been fixed. If Camden was a private road that was owned by someone who had to maintain the road themselves, it would have been fixed. But the problem with privatizing things is you have that balance where many of the people who are struggling, who would be on the lower end of the economic ladder, if everybody has to see about it on their own, they are the ones that will struggle. And unfortunately, the world over, that's kind of the predicament everyone finds themselves in. We need this government and we need to come together to make sure that the people less fortunate do not fall through the cracks. But in order to do that, we create this entire structure that digs out our own eye at the same time. Now, that fracas between the leader of the PDP, Mr. Watson Duke, and the leader of the THA, Mr. Farley Augustine, may not yet be finished. Because I think the move that Mr. Farley Augustine is going to make here would be very interesting. Farley, THA reshuffle this month. He's going to reshuffle the THA this month. Now, here's the thing. The initial placements inside of the Tobago House would have very likely had the input of Mr. Watson Duke, or at least the input of the party in general. Now, all of those people are independent. So, they may be all now under the thumb of Mr. Farley, who would hold all the power in that case. This would be interesting. So, if someone is removed from a position here, it's not like they're still in the ruling party. If someone is removed from a position in the THE, they are no longer part of the ruling party because there is no ruling party. So what would your position be? If You are removed from a position inside of the Tobago House. There's nothing like the ruling party anymore. So it's not like you're in government. You're just outside. Interesting stuff coming up. Tobago House of Assembly Chief Secretary Fali Augustine has revealed that a THA reshuffle is coming and the changes would take effect closer to month end. He said the team has had a year in office and some changes are to be made. He spoke about the impending reshuffle during an interview with reporters on Friday. The PDP won the December 6, 2021 THA election 14-1. 1 year later, Augustine and 15 other THA members announced their resignations from the Progressive Democratic Patriots. All 15 members have stated that they are now independents. Augustine said a reshuffle of the THA independence is looming. Francis Sylvester, the legend. Wow, what a name. Nathan, good night. I got a question concerning the NIS statement they print out for you. Do you understand it? Which NIS statement are you speaking about exactly? I'm not sure which NIS statement you're speaking of. So, if you're out of the Tobago House now, the chief secretary has moved you out of the position you were in before. If you are an assemblyman, like Mr. Watson Duke, or what's the question about it? I have seen it before. I believe I understood it when I saw it. But to really know what you're talking about and give an answer to that, I'll have to be watching that in front of me. Or I'd have to be someone who works in that every day, and I don't work in that every day. So you could ask the question, but and I'll try to answer as best as I can and what I know, but my knowledge on that would be limited. So yeah, if you're an assemblyman, then fine, you'll still be an assemblyman like Mr. Watson. He is still the assemblyman for, where is he? Roxborough, is it? That he's still the assemblyman for? Oh, True Ninja, what's the word? We're talking Tobago, man. We're talking Tobago. You'd still be an assemblyman, but what about those who weren't assemblymen? They just had positions inside of that THA. They just had positions inside of the THA. What happens if you are removed from that position, you are not an assemblyman, and you are not part of a ruling party anymore, because there is no ruling party anymore? What's going to be your position? Where are you going to be? And this has put Mr. Farley in a uniquely powerful position here. Yo, Kensha, good night, good night, good night. It puts him in a uniquely powerful position because he has made himself the de facto leaders. He has made himself the de facto leader of this group of independents. Now, being that he was the chief secretary, he was supposed to be the leader all the time, but the structure before had a kind of duality of leadership. There was a leader in the party and then a leader in the house. Now, Mr. Farley has no master. Dobby has no masters. He's a free guy. Farley's a free Farley. He can do as he decides now. Farley has the authority to do so. Yes, he does. He has the authority the authority to shuffle his appointments in the house as he sees fit. He is the chief secretary. And he is using his authority. He is using that authority. Last week we were talking about the carnival issues over in Tobago. The bands were complaining that enough money wasn't being run by the government, so they were threatening to boycott the whole thing. I'm glad you got the reference, Nisi. I'm glad you got the reference. Triniview says Tobagonians don't like Trinidadians unless you are Indian, white, or a tourist. Where did you get that? Where did you get that? I don't know that to be true. I don't know that to be true. I happen to have quite a few Tobagonian friends, and that isn't the Tobago I know. Oh, Cola Babs over there on Instagram says, let's give Tobago full independence. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with that full independence thing with Tobago. We always talk about this. Tobago makes around $200 million per year. Good money. Tobago rakes in. When they do all their tourism and everything, Tobago makes $200 million per year. Do you know how much they spend? Add another zero. That's how much they spend. 2.4, I believe it was this year, billion with a B, billion dollars. If Tobago was to get its independence, the very first budget they run is going to be Tobago. From the very first budget. From the very first budget, it's going to be Bacchanal. People are going to be bailing out of Tobago in throes. They want it more than we want to give it. Give them the shot at it. Let them be their own demise. Here's the thing. If you talk to Tobagonians, they don't want independence. I remember Watson Duke said they want independence. They don't want anything to do with Trinidad, and that's him. But many Tobagonians who talk about that, they don't talk about independence. They talk about something self-determination. Now, the problem with all of this is I don't fully understand what they mean by self-determination. When they talk about self-determination, I don't fully get what they mean. They want to determine themselves what they do. But they're saying it's not independence, but it's self-determination. Now, to me, what they're saying sounds like, now, I would like somebody to sit me down and explain this, and probably in one of the conversations, I'd get someone to explain this to me eventually. But what it sounds like to me, is like Tobago wants to be able to run independently, or at least some Tobagonians would prefer that Tobago runs independently while still getting the money from Trinidad. Because I've heard people in Tobago demanding that Trinidad give them $4 billion for their budget, and they must get that. And then at the same time talking about independence. That independence is secession. Independence is separating from Trinidad and Tobago and being Tobago. You cannot be an independent Tobago and still be part of Trinidad and Tobago. We have to make, if we're part of Trinidad and Tobago, then we make decisions as a body, as a group. We are the entity of Trinidad and Tobago. So, as the entity of Trinidad and Tobago, we make group decisions about what we do with the part of our land called Tobago. Tobago is part of our land. I am just as much a citizen of Tobago as I am a citizen of Trinidad, because I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. If you understand what I mean. Tobago isn't separate like that. We don't have that here. Being a Tobagonian is supposed to be similar to being a Centralian, as I said earlier in the live. I'm from Central, so I'm a Centralian. I'm a Central guy. Now, if you're from the North and you come down Central, I may have certain things I prefer. You know, you don't try and change our culture down in Central. Here, you don't bring your doubles from North and bring it down in Central and think your doubles tastes good. We know what good doubles taste like in Central, etc., etc. But nonetheless, Central is part of Trinidad. So I don't understand how you'd be independent yet still not independent. They want the money to play with and spend how they feel. Trinidad must have no say. It's almost a sugar daddy arrangement. The sugar is yet to be decided. Yes, that seems to be kind of the arrangement that many people want. And I've heard people say, there are people who talk about, they look at the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago, and they believe if Tobago was independent, then Tobago may get a slice of the oil and gas money, because there are some finds of oil and gas that may be in Tobago waters. Now, the problem with that is that if Trinidad and Tobago were to split up into Trinidad separate and Tobago separate, we'd have less maritime borders, and some of those oil-rich resources that we have now as Trinidad and Tobago might be part of Barbados or Venezuela or Guyana's maritime border. So it's just, anyone who puts a little thought to it, like the implications beyond just the first day of, yes, we're independent, we can do what we want. Okay, and then the next day, anyone who puts a little thought to it like that, you start to get the picture that it's not really a feasible thing. Like, this is what I don't understand even with the PDP. If I was a party that had the interest of Tobago running independently, then when I take over from the PNM in Tobago, what I'm looking to do, I don't want a big budget from Trinidad. I'm going to start to try to bring things inside. I'm going to start to try to bring things inside here. The Brexit mentality, True Ninja says. It still isn't like Brexit. Here's the difference. Brexit is like Trinidad and Tobago wanting to leave CARICOM. And there might be good reason for that in certain views. Like, if I was seeing on the news recently, Antigua was one of the few Caribbean islands that has recently actually acceded to the CARICOM treaty that they signed, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, where they're supposed to actually have free movement in between Caribbean countries, so you don't need a work visa or work permit to go work as a CARICOM citizen over in Antigua. They were the first country to do that. Now, if the whole CARICOM does that, where there's free travel across CARICOM, then some people from lower income CARICOM countries may flock to Trinidad and Tobago. They may take some of the lower income jobs, and people who may have taken some of those jobs as trainees could complain that they're theoretically losing their jobs. So you could understand why some people may want that Trinidad not be a part of something like CARICOM if CARICOM was like the European Union. You could understand that kind of correlation there. But that still is different from Brexit. The correlation for the Tobago and Trinidad one would be more like the United Kingdom breaking up. The Scotland wanting to leave. And that is a discussion that they have. That is more like it. Babs over on IG says, one little election outside of the ruling party of the country and it's bacchanal. They can't even run a small shop worth yet a country. And that is what it ends up looking like. That's the first article I started off speaking about this evening, where the guy was saying, the former head of the Tobago branch of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce was talking about the fact that investors are worried. Investors are worried. Looking at what is going on in Tobago, investors are worried. Triniview says Brexit underlying reason was to prevent blacks of North Africa from migrating to England. No, they were actually more worried about the Syrians. They were more worried about Islamic refugees. If you follow much of the Brexit rhetoric, it was less about the African migration and more about the Arab and Islamic migration they were complaining about, and the fact that in the United Kingdom there were regions that were already no-go zones, regions that were under rule of Sharia, the Muslim religious legal system. There are areas inside England that are kind of already like that, and people inside England are saying that England is unrecognizable anymore, and that's kind of more the tone, not just the black Africans thing. And the black Africans thing is a convenient way to bring up, like, if it's racism, it's all about. But that's not racism, and I could understand that. I could understand being a person in a country and not wanting your country to be flooded by other people. I mean, Trinidadians get a couple Venezuelans flowing over here, and Trinidadians start sounding like rednecks real quick. Real quick. You get a Trinidadian to have a discussion about Venezuelans where they think you're more on their side, and what they may be willing to see may astound you. You are right in that too, but they now regretting the economic fallout. I do not know that to be true. what is going on in Britain now isn't only the fault of Brexit, and Britain isn't the only one suffering for the suffering in the European Union. Britain might say that they're doing better than Germany right now. Germany right now is trying to restart coal plants. That's where Germany is at. So I don't know that they're wrong. Listen, I am kind of in favor of things like Brexit, kinda, because I think that some of the people, well, all kinds of things. Some of the people that are more of the view of trying to integrate everyone, they are kind of controlling some of their ideas is that, okay, we coalesce into these larger organizations, and then we are able to get rid of the small individual mindsets and be able to push global mindsets, the World Economic Forum, etc., 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 etc. And those things are of more concern to me than individuals leaving. I'm more for that, yeah, by all means, Brexit, everyone exit, and make individual decisions, and then the individuals can then come together and have agreements based on those things. I'm more for that. How would the supposed Tobago oil money help them if they're spending $2 billion? Good question. Tyson says licenses for fish. Yes, paperwork licenses for fish. It will get to that anyways. Well, it might. It might, but it's not what I would like. All right, so back over in Tobago there, Mr. Mr. Fali is waxing powerful with his abilities. As we said, he's already going to reshuffle his house. And then, Fali, Tobago moving away from February Carnival. Tobago House of Assembly Chief Secretary Fali Augustine says he is not at all daunted by any decision by the Tobago Band Leaders Association to protest if the THA's $1.3 million allocation to MAS is not increased. Augustine was speaking to the media in Tobago on Friday. Augustine said he was open to meeting with stakeholders. I'm open to meeting with them as stakeholders, and the decision to whether they produce something for the road or not, that's obviously their call. As I indicated, remember, Tobago is transitioning to the place where February Carnival for Tobago would mean something different than it would mean for Trinidad. And October will eventually become our main stake in Carnival business, sorry. And so what they are doing, protest, might even speed along the transition process faster. But we'll see how it goes, he said. Here's my problem with what he said there. We were talking last week, and I don't like the idea of the government giving much money to the band leaders in the first place, because I think this thing is supposed to be a business. It's supposed to be a business. You're supposed to make your money off of it, and it is a business. They do run it like businesses. You pay for your costume. The bands take the money from the payment for the costume, and you use that money for the next year to do what you have to do. You shouldn't need government money to run a business. That doesn't make sense. The government inputs your initial capital and you walk away with the profit. That does not make sense to me. So I don't mind the government not giving more money in and of itself. But it could nearly seem from Mr. Fali's statement here that the less money is with the purposeful intention to sabotage the February Carnival. And now, the reason that the government has a stake in Carnival, the reason Carnival has a national significance, wasn't originally about money. If we could go back in our memories to primary school social studies classes, Carnival was meant as a historical, cultural, Trinbagonian thing. The timing of the Carnival has to do with its history. For Tobago to move away from the February Carnival, not that they move away from Carnival in totality. They're not saying they're moving away from Carnival in totality. They're saying we're quashing the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. We're going to move to the Tobago Carnival in October. That, if you recall, in order to start this carnival, they went over to Grenada to do research. So, from the Trinbagonian cultural event, it has become a Grenadian-born money-making procedure. In that case, I think, well, fine. Everyone could decide to make money when they want, but then the government should have no part in anything in that. Don't tell me it's anything to do with cultural. To me, I seem to remember when they were talking about that Tobago Carnival, they were assuring people that their intention was not to move away from the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. They were just trying to do something individual and their Tobago own. So then, I don't want to hear anything when they're talking about that, about the culture and the cultural roots, because they don't seem to give a whisker about the culture or the cultural roots. Am I wrong? He said band leaders receive less money in October and produced better mass. For October mass, we gave far less to the band leaders in terms of what we give as a subsidy in October to assist them. And yet they performed better. Okay. On that term, I don't mind. But it nearly seems like they're starving the money on purpose to kill the February carnival in order for the October one to live. And here's my problem with a lot of these kind of things. I'm not even much on the carnival. Carnival is nearly inconsequential in the grand scheme of things to me. But one of my problems on some of these things is the nature of people to try to build legacies. The problem very often we stumble upon in politics, in Trinidad and Tobago and in the world over, is that, all right, we have a 5-year term. This government comes in and builds a hospital. That's their legacy. They want to stamp something on the country that is going to last through time. They build a hospital. The next government comes in, they quash the hospital, squash it, and change it into a dung heap, and they build a tower because they want something with their name to last through time. And I worry that the October business has some of that in it. It seems like it has some of that in it. Like, their aim is to kill that Trinidad link, and we would make something new with our name in our image. And that's what would be Tobago. Now, listen. We live in a democratic country. I suppose if that's what Tobagonians want, that's what Tobagonians want. So be it. But I wonder if that is indeed what Tobagonians want. True Ninja says, tourists flood TNT for February, he will lose out. I do think they will lose out. Because bear in mind, last year, Trinidad did not hold a major carnival. So many of the Trinidad mass players who didn't get to spend their 20,000 that they allotted for carnival in February came over to Tobago. Now, this year, do you think they will forsake the Trinidad mass in order to go to the Tobago mass? I hope they know what they're doing. Because if this is about stamping your name and your legacy on Tobago, what a way to do it. It have Tobagonians that are not giving up the Trin mass. Of course there are Tobagonians that are not giving up the Trin mass. People who really like the mass, and they won't give that up. There are people who leave their country and come for the Trinidad and Tobago Carnival, for the national festival. And if they come, what's going to go on? I saw that he said that their intention is to make Tobago a kind of getaway for that period where, you could go and relax. And I suppose that's for people who do not participate in Carnival. They make Tobago into a kind of getaway during that period. You could go to Tobago and get away from the carnival. So are they saying then that they are going to have zero carnival activities during that period? Is that what you're saying? Because not having the main mass on the streets is one, but no fets in the run up, no street parties. Is that what you're saying? That because the idea he gave there is nearly like you make it to the Camp Haven. If you want to camp away from Carnival, you go to Tobago. And I understand the idea, but how big is that market? And are you sure that's the direction you're going in? Are you sure that's the direction you're going in? How many people who are accustomed, bear in mind, there were vendors, the street vendors, the men on the street, the people on the street, complained about the October Carnival that they didn't make money with it. It didn't have the foot traffic that they were promised. And the Tobago House of Assembly, sorry, I don't know if they did it yet, but they promised that they had to go and that they were going to pay back the people for their lost money. Many of the vendors didn't make any money. I hope that they already paid back the people. So some of those vendors may be looking forward to the February Carnival because they know how that runs. They know how to run their thing there. Okay, if you squash the February one, can you promise the small man that would have taken that bumper crop of income that he got during that January-February period, can you promise him that you would get that same income during the point in time? If you make it into the exclusive getaway kind of thing. And here's the thing. If he did this, I know Mr. Farley Augustine, I believe he's a Seventh-day Adventist, he's a religious man. Even if he did this on religious grounds, I might have understood. But then, how could you have the October Carnival? If you were saying that, as a religious pious man, I think that the Bacchanalian revelry involved in the carnival activities is not ideal for our society and building our culture. Let's move away from it. I could have understood and respected that. But that's not even what they're saying. Because you're still holding the carnival in October. Just about the same thing. So what is the point? Is October Carnival somehow going to be more profitable than the carnival they had in February? And what are they going to do in October that is going to make it somehow more profitable than the February? Why October as an alternative for it? Why? Are you sure that it's going to be more profitable? What makes you think so? October is the rainy season. There are already festivals planned for that time period. You are competing with other people. You see, I remember listening to this last year. Gypsy, who is the NCC chairman, I believe, was talking about why he wanted to still hold carnival, etc., and not hold carnival in a different part of the year, etc., etc., etc. And he was talking about the fact that for many people who are common partiers, especially the party tourists, and that's who you're aiming for over in October, etc., you're aiming at the party tourists, people who travel across countries to go to party. Many of those people have an understanding that there's a global schedule, there's a global calendar of parties. You have your different spots. And Mr. Gypsy was saying last year, the reason that they didn't want to not hold carnival is they didn't want Trinidad and Tobago to lose its spot in the global calendar of events. Because if you lose your spot, if, for example, Trinidad didn't host that February Carnival and some other person started a large event that was able to catch on during that time, then Trinidad would have competition for that event. So now we know that Trinidad has globally, and I mean, we are known for that. That is what Trinidad is a lot known for in that party side of atmosphere. We're known for Carnival. And it's known that Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival is right before Lent. It's actually set up that way for a religious reason. For religious observers, it even makes sense too. And this is what happens when you destroy things that have been done and have been down there for long times during history without fully understanding it. There's a concept called Chesterton's fence. I believe it's from an author, G.K. Chesterton, a British man from long ago. He's dead. But the idea behind Chesterton's fence, he gave a riddle or a little story where If you walk to a fence, if you walk up and you meet a fence in a field, you never move that fence until you find out the full reason that the fence is there. And there are different types of people. There are people that will walk up to a fence in a field and say like, well, what is fence doing here? Let me move the fence. While there are people who would walk up to a fence in a field and be like, I don't know why this is here. Let's not move the fence till we figure it out. I think they're moving the fence before they figured out fully why the fence was there. If you're saying there should be, as I said, if you were saying there should be no fence, there should be no carnival, that's another thing. But to move it, what's the purpose? What's the reason? What's the benefit? I don't like that. And there's a feeling, and you know, regularly, hey, Rooney, the Tobagonian, in late. There's a feeling, there's a tendency many people have to call the PNM leaders dictatorial, and I could understand that, but this has a very dictatorial feel, in fact. This kind of thing. There's a dictatorial feel to this. And speaking of that dictatorial feel, I know this is Tobago Day, yes, but there's one thing I found interesting to talk about as regarding the news in Trinidad here. Yes, I actually saw your hey comment over on YouTube. I saw it in the end when I looked finally at the end over on YouTube. Kevin Short here for the #1 show on YouTube. Appreciate that, Kevin Short. I appreciate that kind of encouragement over there on YouTube. But yes, one story I just had to talk about over here in Trinidad. I found it very interesting as we're talking about dictatorial tendencies. PM only inviting mainstream media to pressers at diplomatic center. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says he will only invite the mainstream media to press conferences at the diplomatic center. The announcement came at the PNM's Mix and Mingle gathering at the waterfront on Monday night. Ladies and gentlemen, in very many countries, the media and the government are mortal enemies. It is a question of life and death. In Trinidad and Tobago, it is a question of how many people got invited to the Prime Minister's press conference. And this is my problem very often with Dr. Rowley. He's comparing Trinidad and Tobago here to the hellholes of the world. There aren't democratic countries in the world. There aren't generally democratic countries in the world where that's a struggle. And he's juxtaposing it like, you know, there are some places where the media and the government are enemies, but here their worry is who's invited to the press conference. This is exactly their point. They feel like you are an enemy of the media because you are not inviting them to the press conference. So what is your point there? The Media Association of Trinidad and Tobago recently took Prime Minister Rowley and the Office of the Prime Minister to task for not having a clear policy on who could and could not attend the press conferences, after Robert Amar, owner of 104.7, complained he was barred from last Thursday's COVID briefing despite attending press conferences in the past. Now, it's very important as we go on with this article, I think, to listen to what the Media Association is talking about. Listen to what their problem is, and then listen to what Dr. Rowley addresses. Their problem is they want a clear policy. They're not saying who Dr. Rowley should or should not invite. What they want is a policy. So they want to be able to look and see that the reason that Dr. Rowley didn't invite this person is because of this clear outlined rule in their policy. But without a policy, it is on whim and fancy and on the kind of authoritarian edge where there's no one he has to answer to. If I don't like you, I don't invite you. And that's the end of that. So the Media Association is asking for a policy. Now let's listen to what Dr. Rowley said. Dr. Rowley responded to Matt and the editorials Matt says that it's unacceptable for the Prime Minister to have maybe no policy with respect to who comes to the press conferences. Sometimes sometimes something is in such a plain view that it is invisible. The policy is by invitation, he said, soliciting some laughter from his PNM colleagues. As a Prime Minister, as the leader of a supposedly free country, your policy on who you would take questions from is who I invite. And now you could say that we should hold it. We should hold it in our hearts that, our Prime Minister is a good man. And he would invite everybody, he would invite people fairly, He's a good man. He would invite people. Well, no, people don't trust that. They don't trust that your invitations are going to be fair. So what they want is, let's outline a policy. Let's outline. He is way too comfortable making that statement. Exactly. This right here is extremely scary. This is extremely scary that the Prime Minister of our nation is taking a position and laughing with it. He thinks it's all geep and jokes, that in order for you to question him, you have to be invited by him. Who do you think you are? You are not the monarch of this country. You are not the king. You are not the emperor. You are not Chairman Mao in communist China. You are a prime minister. You are voted. You are a servant of the people. Minister is another word for servant. Prime minister is the same thing as chief servant. You are supposed to be the leading servant. So aloof, yes, it is. And that's why I say that you always get that attitude from the PNM. You always get that elitism attitude from the PNM. Constantly. It's their mantra, it feels like, very often, that they are up there and the rest are down here. We have the birthright to run this nation. We know how this is to be done. And who are you to question us? I invite you if you want to question me. You don't just get to question me. Who do you think you? It's disgusting, really and truly. I find this disgusting. Everybody, this is Dr. Rowley going on here. Everybody who labels themselves media will demand that they be entitled to turn up in the press conference. Leaders of political parties, candidates, sponsors of vulgarity and insults. If there's a press conference at the Prime Minister's residence and we invite TV6, CNC3, TTT, Channel 5 and even Loop of the modern era, I find it difficult to accept that if I don't allow every media Mary and Johnny, that there's not press freedom in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the dishonesty of Dr. Rowley here. Was the Media Association asking him to invite everyone blindly? Were they asking him to throw out an open invite for everyone who wants to come? No. That's not what they were asking. They were asking him simply for policy. How do you decide who comes to the press conference? That's all we want to know. And he is saying, I don't want any and everybody coming to my press conference. Okay. How do you decide who comes? How do you decide that? What's the criteria for deciding that? He then asked if CNC3 would be okay with being rotated out of the press conference, as was being suggested by at least one editorial, to be replaced by the latest blogger who calls himself the media with a name and a jersey. So, someone suggested that, good evening, Shad, someone suggested that one of the methods you could do is rotate the media houses. So, okay, you can't allow everyone in at the same time, so the recognized media correspondents, you rotate them. This one in this time, this one in that time, this one in this time. He is telling CNC3 that, would you like to be rotated out for any other small fry? He isn't understanding what he's saying there. He's basically telling CNC3, would you like to face competition? Obviously, a business is going to say no. What manner of idiocy is that? Would you like to face competition? Obviously, they're going to say no. And you're going to use that as some massive revelation. You see, That's why I don't invite anyone else. Because the media houses who don't want to face competition as a business say that they don't want to be rotated out. Well, that is the exact problem. And that's the problem we face in Trinidad. And that's the problem we face constantly with the People's National Movement. We have a problem where businesses that may not even be ideal for the modern era are forced to continue because the PNM thinks that they are the ones that have been there all the time and they must continue. Remember, the PNM, as soon as they came in, one of the first things they did was kill the online market, kill online business, kill people who wanted to start entrepreneurial car businesses. You aren't going to bring in roll-on, roll-off cars. Go to Ansamakal and buy their car. You aren't going to bring in jerseys and pants and shoes online and sell it for a cheaper price. No. Go to Shoe Locker, Francis Fashions and buy your overpriced, lower quality goods. That's the PNM. He then asks, he said he has always been available for the media's questions. Once again, the PM asked, as he has on the political platform, why the media does not ask the opposition leader as many questions. Dr. Rowley again called on the media to ask who removed the clause in the OAS contract, which the government continues to fight in the courts. Here's my problem with this. He is saying, of course, I know they are screened, but the US president is a special case, and it wasn't screened previously. He has to screen it because, his brain doesn't seem like it's functioning that well anymore. So he screens it and answers questions. He screens it and answers questions, that have already been answered by his staff. So that's a whole other thing. But the Prime Minister is asking why the media doesn't ask questions of the opposition as much. I think the name is the answer. They are the opposition. They don't make decisions on running the country. They don't make decisions on whether we're going to go into a COVID lockdown or not. They don't make decisions that we have to wear a mask or we don't have to wear a mask. They don't make decisions about bringing in property tax or not. That's not their position right now. You are the government. That shouldn't be too difficult to understand. People and the media are going to ask you more questions when you're the one with the power. It's to say it like the 90s children, the 90s child I am, duh. Duh. Of course, they're going to ask more questions of the government than the opposition. The opposition doesn't have the power to make all of those decisions. So obviously, the main questions go to the government. Why is this confusing? And this, to me, highlights the main drawback of Dr. Rowley's nature and personality in politics. He is given to that arrogance. He's given to that arrogance. Where here he's questioning whether a media house wants to face competition, which obviously they don't. He is saying to the media association that is asking for a policy, he's saying his policy is invite, who he says is who comes. And then he is surprised that the media is asking the government more questions than the opposition. Like, what is going on here? Kern asked, you think it should have carnival? I want to hear your opinion. Should have carnival, what do you mean by that? Do I think the government, my opinion is, not just if you're asking about because of COVID and all of that, not just because of COVID, but the government shouldn't really be involved in carnival in the first place. If that thing is a money-making enterprise, then leave it as a money-making enterprise and let the people make their money. If you're asking if I think the government should ban it, then no. Because that's a dangerous road to go down. I am already worried about this government, Dr. Rowley, banning media personnel from asking him questions. Would I want to give him the more power? Generally, no. The answer is no. Earl Panton says every institution, group, big business in this country is politically aligned to self-interest. True. Well, I don't know every, but many, yes. I don't deny that at all. No way would I deny. All right, folks. All right, folks. That's all I have for now. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. And any further questions before I jump out? The problem is the arrogance lacks vision. Lee Kuan Yew was arrogant, but generally. I understand that. I understand that. If you're arrogant, you must be right. XBB, nothing. Rowley is the worst. I don't know if I'll say the worst, but I mean, it's not like he's that good. I'll put it that way. Power boy. Yeah, power. So it goes. Alright. I think that's it. No further questions or comments. The whole world would get it. Yes. Hey. Yes, he is successful politically. And just by the way, I would rate Rowley as, by and large, a relatively good politician. I just don't particularly like him as a leader. And I mean, probably liking leaders shouldn't be a regular thing anyway. Name a PM who passed through worse than Rowley now. Ooh, you're looking for me to stay here for another hour. You're looking for me to stay here for another hour. But on general prime ministerial duties, I'll say this and leave you all to settle with this. And I know some people that might eat up themselves, but on general prime ministerial duties, Kamala Persad-Bissessar was a way worse prime minister. She was not a good leader. She still is not a good leader. She's a horrible leader. She didn't lead her party well. She didn't lead the government well. She always had many people around her that seemed that they always had a lot more influence, or too much influence, and then she had to constantly rotate her inner circle because of that. So as a prime minister, she was not much better. She was worse, I would say. Quite worse. Probably our worst prime minister ever. He will be the only PM to complete 2 terms since Williams. Good point. Very good point. I would say she was the worst. It was just at a different point in time. She was in charge of the country during the soaring oil prices. So they had lots of money to play with. And boy, did they play with it. So I don't know under which criteria I would rate her as a better prime minister than Dr. I don't know under which criteria. I mean, there was more freedom in the business arena generally when she was the prime minister. But that wasn't even as a direct result of her. That was just the nature of it. And Dr. Rowley clamped down on a lot more, but that's the nature of the PNM also. So I don't know if I would give her points more for that, but that's the area I would rate Dr. Rowley lower than their party for. But in general, in terms of prime minister, don't read Kamala. All right, folks. I'm seeing your list, Curvon. I'm seeing your list. I could guess how it goes. She did more than her. Okay, Junior B. What more did she do? What would you say? What would you say was the more that she did? What would be your criteria? I'm saying a little longer just to see this. What would be your criteria? You would say the more she did. She did more. What more did she do? She built more infrastructural projects. If she did that, as I said, right, infrastructure, as I said, they had a lot more money. They spent a lot more money. That's not necessarily a good thing. They spent a lot of that money in contracts in order to siphon off the money. So the fact that she did more infrastructural projects is actually a negative because they did more projects in order to steal money. And I am in, bear in mind, I'm a contractor. That's part of what we do. I am not saying things that I theorize here. Money, bribes, extras, lanyap, little thing to stuff your pocket flowed like water during that time. But I'm not, this isn't, bear in mind what I'm saying here isn't a boost for the PNM or Dr. Rowley. I'm sticking with the exact specific of whether I would rate him as the worst. I wouldn't. I would put Kamala Prasad Bisesa lower than him for sure. Allegedly, okay. Yeah, I'd put her lower than him. But PNM versus UNC, which you believe is better? No. I have said this numerous times. I don't deny it. I don't hide it. I will not, cannot vote for UNC, vote for any party, but especially the UNC with Kamala Prasad Bisesa as the leader. It's ridiculous that the UNC cannot get rid of a failing leader. This lady has lost, and I don't mean this as a personal attack on Mrs. Prasad Bisesa as a human being. I'm talking about in politics here. She has lost every single election beside the first two that she won that year. All the others, all the other national elections, she keeps losing. How do people expect in her party that she's going to lose each election, but somehow, somewhere in the future, she's then going to win a next one? She's then going to win a next one at some point in the future. That is very unlikely. Where is SIS, by the way? Mr. Man is in Canada chilling with his new wife. Just by the way. So, UNC, in order for UNC to re-enter the national conversation, they need a change of lead. They really need that. Who you think is best to lead UNC from the members they have now? That's a hard question. I might have said when they had Vasant Bharat in the mix there, he may have been a leader that could have reached a wider audience. He might have been the best. Prakash Ramada is not going to make it because he lost credibility when he led the COP into being the corpse. You have to follow the politics all the way back. Remember, he was the leader of the COP when the COP died. The COP was supposed to leave the People's Partnership. Many members of the COP left the People's Partnership complaining about the blatant corruption, and Mr. Ramada insisted that they remain there. So he has lost that gravitas on the national stage. He wouldn't make sense. Problem is, Rudy looks like he's next. And no, not Mr. Rudy. Not Mr. Rudy. I once read an article that said they quoted Mr. Rudy as being as palatable as broken glass. That was the best description I got. Mr. Rudy does not have wide appeal. And that's a problem that UNC suffers. That's a problem that UNC suffers. UNC has many people, many high-up members that have extremely strong internal appeal, but horrible external appeal. That could be considered the height of what happened with Kamala Prasad Bisesa. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, right now in the UNC party, is immovable. She, every internal elections, they can't move her. It's not even close. She has a group of stalwart fans that will never move. They have pictures of her as a demigod. That is Mama Kamala, mother of the nation. That's a problem. That's a problem. So, you can't move her internally, so she'll win every internal election, and then, when you reach to the external elections, they don't have the appeal. It's a sad reality with the UNC, but it is a reality. John Robbie says, Michaela will come and take over, I doubt it. I doubt it. It's going to be difficult. You see, the problem is, sorry, getting rid of KPB. I don't doubt that if Michaela came back to the UNC, especially with the kind of legacy nature of it, that she may be able to make a stir. One of the problems with Michaela is that she does not actually have any experience of note. She is a fully brand new entity, and I know for some people that's appealing, but for many people that's not too encouraging. You don't know what to expect necessarily, but that's one. But I do think that she could win it. It's just difficult. That will be difficult. It will be difficult. For her to take over in the UNC would be a very difficult fight. Coconut Boys MTB says it's a sad reality for TNT Cameron won't leave 12 lost elections and still like a barnacle. Javid says CUP was to remain on their own, but they got bright-eyed when partnership idea came up. I always say this. CUP, the COP, 2 more elections, and the COP would have been the number 2 party in Trinidad and Tobago. UNC played COP like a fiddle. UNC played COP like a fiddle. UNC understood that the COP was going to take them over. They understood that. Then they brought them into the partnership, and over the course of the 5 years of governance, totally assimilated the COP. When the COP left the partnership, there was no real individual party left. All the members of the COP were now back to being members of the UNC or left totally. Yes, it is Prakash's fault. Yes, that's why I said I don't think he would make it as a leader anymore, because people are aware of that. But that was COP's problem. They were never supposed, to me, this is my opinion, they were never supposed to join the partnership. 2 more elections. That 2010 election, of course, they wouldn't have won. 2015, they wouldn't have won. Not 20, would that be? Yeah, 2015. And then 2020 would have been a COP strong election. Because COP was already getting numbers countrywide. They were already getting numbers countrywide. Another thing that could have allowed the COP to win. If, when so many allegations and so much seeming proof was coming out about the corruption during the partnership reign, if the COP left, I could rate Mr. Abdullah of, what do you call that Labour Party again? The Labour Party, that Mr. Abdullah, MSG, right. The Labour Party, the MSG, I could rate them at least for some of that. They said they saw corruption and they couldn't take it, so they left the partnership. They left while the partnership was in governance. I could rate that. Something that disappointed me, my memory is probably too good for some of this politics business. A disappointment I had during that time. Mr. Daga, legendary African black power figure in Trinidad and Tobago. I remember about a year into the partnership, he was part of the partnership too. He came out and said he has never seen such theft in his life. He came out on national news saying that. They gave him some kind of foreign ambassadorship position and he disappeared. Died. Never saying a word after that. Seemed like so many people inside of there went in, and before they could say anything, they got their mouth stuffed. Their mouth was so full, they didn't even get the chance to say anything. Something has happened, Coconut Boy says our political system is off. The PNM could do what it wants, it can't lose. It could seem like that. And that's why I think Dr. Rowley is going to run again. It's like, I remember him saying this was the last election was his last election, and then, he's going to resign and whatever. Now it seems pretty clear that he intends to run again. I think that is because he understands the Trinidad political climate. He understands that he will win again. If I were to guess, an election is called in 2025, and it's Dr. Rowley versus Kamala Prasad Bisasa again, It's going to have a lower voter turnout. People are going to be disenchanted. They are going to be disappointed. They don't care about it much anymore. But Dr. Rowley is going to. All right, folks. You all dragged me out for longer with this PNM UNC business. You all dragged me out. Yes, the UNC needs to change leadership. But PP Junior Abi, don't do me that. Junior Abi, don't do me that. Don't do me that. Let me go in peace. I will not vote for KR again, or I will go up as an independent. You see, so it would have a. I think if they have the next election, if it's the same two people, it's going to have a much lower voter turnout, dog low voter turnout, and he would win again. All right, people. Thank you for tuning in. It was good. The reason you all could pull me on longer is because I actually enjoy this. So it was good. It was nice. I will see you guys again tomorrow evening. Thursday evening is the Thursday Talks. There's no direct topic. We just come and we talk. You could jump in. You could jump in. You could jump in the live and we'd have discussions, etc. Tomorrow, you could ask that question again, Javid, and we might get into it. All right, folks. Have a blessed night. Enjoy your night. Be safe. Peace. Laters, people. Nisi is still there. Where you gone? Laters, folks. Peace out. Good night. Good night.